thank you very much. Welcome at this presentation, Supercharge Your Productivity, Mastering Prompt Engineering. I'm super excited about this subject, and I'm really happy to share it with you. We had some technical difficulties, but finally we can begin. What am I going to do today? I'm going to talk about why prompt engineering, definitely when you're a front-end developer, a group of front-end developers here, and I'm going to inspire you, hopefully, why you should start learning this. Then I will dive with you in the Crafting AI prompt framework that I have created to help you create prompts so that you can actually start directly after this session with prompt engineering. And finally, I have some inspiring examples how you can use it in your workflows, but also, of course, how you can work with it as a front-end developer. So, why prompt engineering? Well, imagine that someone new is joining your company, and that person tells you that he or she has never used Google before. How would you respond to that? And I say Google, I did this presentation already at some other conferences, and someone said like, yeah, another search engine. No, not any search engine before. How would you respond? Would you ask that person like, how do you get your information? Or would you teach that person like, well, maybe going to a library is way more time than just Googling it? What would you do? Well, this exactly is how I feel like about generative AI at this moment. When I see people doing their daily things like we do it normally, right? And I see how fast I can do it with generative AI, I'm like, why are you not using it yet? And that is why I'm advocating this, of course, at a lot of venues and places to inspire you, but also other people about this subject. And who am I? I'm Jeroen Egelmeers, a tech lead at Society and public speaker. Today I'm here, but I also have another conference at the end of the day, so that's super exciting. But if you have any questions on the end of the day, then please on the end of this presentation, then please make sure to find me in a venue anywhere before 3 o'clock, because then I have to leave. I'm doing a lot of different things. I am a tech lead at Bovema at the moment, and I'm giving IT training via the Capgemini Academy. But that's it about me. Let's dive into prompt engineering. So, what is prompt engineering? So imagine that let's do a quick check. Who has never seen ChatGPT or something? Ah, good. That's a very good thing. So I'm not going to explain how this works, right? You have an input field, you can enter something, and that is your prompt. But here is the big difference. Imagine that I'm a student, and I'm going for the first time to the high school this year. We just started again. Take my backpack, moving to school, and then my teacher tells me, here is your very first assignment. And I have to write an essay about World War II. Well, sounds easy, you have ChatGPT right now. So as a very lazy student, I'm just typing that into ChatGPT and get the result. Very easy. So I sent this to my teacher, and then it goes wrong. And why is that? Well, that teacher does this every year again. And I'm not the only student entering and submitting this essay. No, all the other students are doing the same. So what happens? This teacher will have some red flags raised as he sees like, well, probably you didn't write this yourself. And that is an example of a very bad prompt or not so good prompt, because my goal is not met. If I'm not allowed to use ChatGPT in class, well, okay, then I have to fool my teacher that I still use it, but that he doesn't see it. And context is key in this case. So what I did is really lazy, just entering the assignment in ChatGPT and I get the result. But you can change this to get the right result as well. So let's dive into that. I keep the same, right? I want to stay at this assignment. So write an essay about World War II with 100 words. But now I'm going to give it more context. So what I'm going to do is I ask it to act like a student, because I'm a student. Then I am asking it to write it with A2 English. So there's an English level. You have A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, where C2 is an expert and A1 is, I'm just a beginner. I just entered high school. I'm at the Netherlands, so my English is not so good, so I will keep it very close to the lower levels. And I can send this to my teacher. The fun thing is, I went to a lot of high schools to do similar presentations because they are a bit scared about ChatGPT. How do we deal with this? And I tried this example, and they did say like, no, you wrote that one. I don't know if that says something about my English, but anyway, that's another thing. Having that said, so this is an example of a way better prompt, right? So we actually met our goal. We did fool our teachers. And of course, this is a nice example to get you into it. But the problem that I was facing during a lot of presentation that I did lately was that people were asking over and over again, how do I remember what should be in the prompt? And how can I create the prompts by some structures or something? And I was thinking about that, and I was like, yeah, that's a very good question, but there is not something really about this yet in the world. So what I did is I wrote a blog, and while writing, using ChatGPT, of course, I came to a very nice structure, framework that you can use and that can guide you to help you craft prompts. Now, I did work with this already for quite some time, a lot of presentations, so people are still sending me a lot of nice LinkedIn messages about this. So if you're going to use it, let me know if it works for you as well. So let's dive into that in the next section of this presentation. So we are going to talk about the Crafting AI Prompt Framework, how you can build your prompts and what you should think about while writing prompts, definitely if we are talking about company environments. So the Crafting AI Prompts Framework has 3 phases. First of all, the crafting phase, where we are actually going to write this message. So we are going to prompt it, craft that prompt. Then we have the validation phase, which is very important if you're talking about company structures, because we don't want to send any company information, or we want to make sure that we have GDPR in place, or we're not going to say anything about people. But also we want to make it interactive, and we want to make sure that our goal is met. I did just show you the example of that student. Yeah, you want to fool your teacher in that case. But also, a lot of people forget about this non-disclosure part. And I will get into that in the next section, where I will dive into each component. And then you have the enhancement phase. So actually, if you're sending your message to ChatGPT or prompt, then you want to validate very carefully if the output is right. And I played a game with ChatGPT, and you will see that it can fool you as well. And it even knows it does. So let's find that out soon. So let's dive into each phase per component. First of all, the context. For this session, I'm going to write a LinkedIn post. So maybe you can do that as well about Frontmania, or maybe even about this presentation. But you need to give it context, right? So if I'm just sending to ChatGPT, write me a LinkedIn post, yeah, about what? Or if I ask it to write a LinkedIn post about the presentation that I'm giving here at Frontmania, where was that presentation about? So you want to be very carefully and clearly about what did I do, where was the presentation about, who were the audience maybe. Maybe you even want to say what were the key takeaways so that ChatGPT can use them for your LinkedIn post. So in this case, I'm going to tell it that I gave a presentation at Frontmania about the Crafting AI Prompt Framework. I gave some very cool examples on the end. I had an exciting audience, hopefully. And et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, you can fill it in yourself, I think, already. But there are a lot of other things that you could do. If you're, for example, talking about code, give it some examples where what you're facing. Or if you have any problems, then ask it, I have this code, what can I do? There are a lot of opportunities here if you're giving it the right context. Then we are going to the register. And at the register, it's actually a really expensive word, I would say, for writing style. And here we are going to tell it how we would like to have it write out the output. So maybe you have seen already a lot of LinkedIn posts lately with ChatGPT. And what happens is that ChatGPT is built, or the models are created by a lot of data from the internet. Now, the majority of this data is from America. And we are a bit down to earth, but they are super excited. And you will see that in those LinkedIn posts, right? So you're going to ChatGPT and ask it to write a LinkedIn post. That's all right. But if you're not telling it to register, you're not telling it what is my writing style, then I'm getting a super excited LinkedIn post. I'm not sure if I want that, right? I'm super excited, so I could do it, but maybe not as that is the case for everyone. And then you have a big difference in your normal post or the one from ChatGPT, and people will see that. So think about that. But you can also ask it to check your grammar or maybe even write it out in Dutch or whatever you want. So be very carefully. And the nice thing here is that I'm writing a lot of blog posts on LinkedIn, for example. So this, what I already mentioned, this complete framework I wrote out on LinkedIn. What I can do is I can actually share those blogs with ChatGPT as the register. So here is some information that I wrote myself, and keep the same writing style in my LinkedIn post that you're going to write, or the next post of the next blog that you are going to write, whatever you want. So very important to take into account. Then we are going to the acting rule, and those are a bit specific. Why is this? If you're talking about the acting rule are like templates within the models that can help you, assist you actually in some directions within the model. And this sounds very hard, but let me explain you. If I want to write a LinkedIn post, then it could be very valuable to ask it to act like a LinkedIn expert. Because then the model knows already from all the expertise it has and all the data it has that it should not use bullet points because you're not allowed to or you're not able to in a LinkedIn post. No, it's going to use, for example, emoticons instead of bullet points. On LinkedIn, we are using hashtags on the end. So it will use hashtags instead of just normal text. And you can think about this for your code as well. It could be very valuable if you have a very hard piece of code that you don't understand to act like a student to explain it to you what that code does. So it will explain it at a very low level, so it's very understandable and good to follow what ChatGPT does. Otherwise, you might get some very, very hard text to read. And I'm not sure if that's helpful if you want to learn something, right? So, the acting rule. The other thing that you can do here is to ask it for another point of view. So, for example, if you're writing something and you're interested in, hey, what would someone in this expertise think about this? Then you could ask it for advice, like, how would this person look at it? And keep in mind, ChatGPT and other models, I'm using ChatGPT throughout the session, but you can also use this in Bing AI or BART or whatever. Make sure that they are token-based. So they are actually predicting the next token, and they keep the previous sentence into account. So if it's writing something, it will keep everything in mind, but it will predict its next tokens. And this can, of course, bring some issues, and I will show you later on, but keep that in mind. Then you want to have a specific format. So probably you want to have it, in this case, in my case, I want to have a LinkedIn post. So I want to tell it, I want to have a header, a title, and then a description with, for example, 3 alineas and some hashtags. You have to be very carefully to explain how that format should be. And we are all front-end developers, right? So we know what user stories are. So I want to use that example as well. Who has been working in different companies already? So not only one, but different companies. So that's a lot of people. Another question for the people who have done this. Where at those companies, they're always writing the same style user stories? A few people, but the majority didn't. So that's actually where I want to go through. I can ask it to write user stories, and it will take the normal format as it's written down on the internet, right? But probably, we as an organization have implemented it differently. And then we want to very carefully explain, this is the format that we are using for our user stories, and ChatGPT will do the same. So keep that in mind, because otherwise you have to rewrite it yourself, and at least I am very lazy, so I want to make ChatGPT do it for me. Why should I do it? Then we are going to the task. Yeah, you want to achieve something, right? So in this case, I want to write a LinkedIn post, or you want to write a user story, or translate this text, or summarize this text. You want to do something. So that is something you also have to very clearly specify what is your task, what should ChatGPT do. And this sounds very easy, but I did also a lot of workshops already, and I can tell you that people really make mistakes like edit or revise, or maybe even review. They don't really see what is the difference in it, but if you're going to play around with it, you will see that there is a big difference in the output with which word you're using. So be very careful what word you're using. And if you're not completely sure what it's going to do, then ask ChatGPT, what are you going to do with this word, right? What is the output? So that is the crafting phase. So we actually wrote now a prompt to ask ChatGPT to write a LinkedIn post for me in this case. Easy, because I can post it directly after the session. Let's go to the validation phase. Yeah, definitely if we are in a company, working for a company, we don't want to share any confidential data. But one of the first things we want to check is it interactive? Really, one of the most nice things about those models is that you can play back and forth with it, so you can have a conversation with it. If I ask it to write a LinkedIn post, but I don't like the second alinea, I can simply ask, okay, rewrite that part. Make it different and add those points. Or if I don't like the user story because it's missing some requirements, I can just ask for it if I ask it open questions. So be very careful with that you're not asking closed questions, but open questions, and that you can do this back and forth conversation with ChatGPT. Then the most important thing, and I'm going to talk slowly through this part, because it's really important to not share any information with, for example, ChatGPT from your company or from people. And the reason for this is they are saving your data. So if you're sharing anything with ChatGPT with your prompts, you will it will probably end up in their model and other people can access it. So be very careful what you're sharing with ChatGPT. And I've done this already a lot of times, also at companies, and they are like, yeah, I can just write something with people's names or something, what their functions are or whatever. Be very careful, because it can end up there and people might not like it, and GDPR will get in place. So really be careful. I will share you some examples how you can still work with data, but not sharing your confidential data. But really think about that. So if you write so you crafted your prompt, validate, didn't I put anything company related that I may not share in my prompt? And then finally, we are going to check if it's goal-driven. So am I going to meet my goal, right? And also there, think about what is my goal. That student didn't want to do that assignment, right? He was a bit forced to do it. Who wants to write an essay about World War II? I don't. Probably that student doesn't. So the thing there is he wants to get a high grade. Or even if he may not use ChatGPT, fool his teacher that he didn't, and then get a high grade. That is your goal. In this case, I want to write a LinkedIn post or maybe a user story. But what should be in there? Be very specific. Then, if you did that, so our goal is met, we did check, do we meet our goal? We don't have any GDPR things or non-disclosure parts from our company information, and it's interactive. If we did validate all those things, then we can hit enter. But I want to be very clear on this. Always validate the output. Because here I did play a hangman game. Who doesn't know what hangman game is? Probably we all do, right? So, yeah. So I was playing this game and I asked ChatGPT, use an English word that exists, right? So I want to be very clear on that. I don't want to play a game with a word that doesn't exist. So I was playing and playing, and I was like, how can this so hard? It shouldn't be that hard, right? So I was very smart. I was thinking, because I was opening another ChatGPT version of Bart, and I asked it, can you help me solve this issue? Because I have no clue what the word can be. And it came up with a lot of things, but I didn't know it. So on the end, I asked, I gave up, what was the word? And then it said, no worries, the word was, I don't know if someone can pronounce it, but I can't. And then, just kidding, that's not a real word. So I was been playing for quite some time, wasting my time, because it was just fooling me and just kidding around about something that I was quite serious about. I was like, yes, I can play a game with this tool. So be careful and do understand how this model works. It's predicting with tokens, so it can really make mistakes as well. So validate the output. So if you hit enter with your prompt, validate if what you get is the real thing, that it's what you're expecting. And why do I use this as an example as well? There was a lawyer in America, and he did his complete case with ChatGPT. Which sounds, well, you could do that maybe. But he didn't validate if all the laws were existing. So he sent this to the jury, and they said, like, well, I don't know where you got this from, but it doesn't exist. And this person has a big problem, because, it was, of course, a wrong case in that sense. So be very careful, definitely, if you're working in a company environment. Also for yourself, of course, because you don't want to have this example in a company-related thing. So be careful. But if we did validate our output, then we can do two things. First of all, we didn't get what we expected. In that case, we're going to adapt and improve, and maybe back to the crafting phase to craft a new prompt, and actually to make sure that we get the desired output, so we will reach our goal. Or we are done, and then we are going to, well, at least improve a bit on ourselves, because do a little retrospective, let's say. Are there any new things that can help me with my next prompts as well? How can I do better? Really the adapting and improving part. So this is just helping you to remember that generative AI, let's say, is growing really fast. Every day there are new tools. So I have my very last slide has a picture which I generated yesterday, because I only had then access to the new tools from ChatGPT, and I did want to have it in. So you can imagine that I was really like, oh, when does it come? But every day there is something new. So make sure you, get around with that a little bit, just as we are used to as front-end developers, right? There are every day and every week new tools. So this is something we can adapt on very easily. And then we have our prompt, we have our goal met. So how does this look like? So this is an example prompt following the framework, but it could be something like acting as a role, perform task in format requirements, use register or writing style, I always say them both, and use this context. So in my example of the LinkedIn part is act as a LinkedIn expert, and I mostly state also like 10 years of experience. The session is too short to completely dive into that, but if you would like to know more, go to the website and you will be redirected to a LinkedIn post, that blog that is really going to explain you how this works. Write a LinkedIn post for me. Be very specific on that, because otherwise it could happen that if ChatGPT is going to state like, as a LinkedIn expert, I'm super excited to share that I just gave a presentation as Frontmania, because it should act like a LinkedIn expert. That's not what I want, right? I want it to write as a LinkedIn expert for me. In format requirements, I want to use very good hashtags to get some interaction. I want to have key takeaways with bullet points, but then emoticons, because that's what we do at LinkedIn. And use register writing style. I want to use my own writing style, and I'm going to share it some information, what I already made, like with a blog or something, so that it can learn from that. And use this context, what I already described, right? So I'm going to explain what I did in this presentation, how awesome the audience was, what I did maybe on the end, and questions or whatsoever. That's something that I'm going to share in the context. Then we have our prompt, and we can do what we want. But always but, right? So please note, this is an example. So it doesn't mean that the role should be in the beginning of your prompt. It's just that you think about all the components in the framework. There are definitely some cases where you don't have to specify the format, or where you don't have to go in detail there. Definitely not if you're already using an acting rule. But the context, I'm always starting with that because that's always important. I cannot imagine a reason why you shouldn't bring the context. Definitely with the coding examples I will give you in a minute. And make sure to remove any abstractions. Garbage in is garbage out. I think there is a really nice way of trying this out with your coworkers or peers. Draw something, just make a drawing on a paper, and then write out how it looks like. Give that instruction to your peers, and then ask that coworker peer to do the same drawing and see what happens. It's pretty hard to give it the right context. So it will take some time. And you might think, well, Jeroen, this is 3 lines, right? So yeah, okay, you need some extra register and writing style and some context, but it's not that hard, right? Well, we are really building prompts of 1,300 words at our company. So you can imagine that is going to take much more time because every word can impact the other in a prompt. So it's pretty difficult to really get the desired goal on the end. So it's, well, prompt engineering is really a new skill that can enhance your productivity, if we say so, also for front-end developers. So now we'll get to that later. So that's it about the framework. Let me quickly dive with you to some examples. And as I already stated, I want to make sure that no one is leaving this room understanding not sharing any confidential data. So I want to dive into that first. How can you write, for example, a user story without sharing the confidential data from your company? Or I use LinkedIn as an example here because then I can reuse it, of course, everywhere. But let's dive into that. You can use placeholders. And I'm really happy with this audience because it's like variables, right? So I don't have to explain how that works. You can just use what I did here, and I have a pointer, but I don't know if you can see it. Company A, between curly brackets, and ChatGPT will do the same for you. So the green square on the back of on the bottom of the page, you can see the same. It will use those placeholders as well. So if you have any data that it should use, but you cannot share it with the models because you're not like having a ChatGPT enterprise within your company, which is only accessible for your company, you want to use the online and open versions, then you could use placeholders with the confidential data. Or, in this case, if I want to write a LinkedIn post, but I don't know if I can call the company name or the people who did invite me, then I can already completely write a LinkedIn post, but I leave those things out until I get permission and I can just simply replace it with the right content. So I think this is pretty well known to all of you as we are developers, right? And we are using this similar thing in coding. But I think this is a very interesting thing. Also, for people who are already deeper into it, get into prompt receipts, because that is something where you really can use variables and those kind of things even further. And you can really build really nice architectures with prompts and for your applications. And I cannot share that right now, but definitely I will share it on other mediums, Medium and LinkedIn, etc. So check that out. Then reviewing. I'm using this a lot right now. So what I'm doing here is, before I was writing content like blogs or things for magazines, and I was asking my peers or coworkers to review my content because my English is not that well, definitely not well writing. So I want to make sure it's all correct, right? So what I did is I wrote it, sent it to my coworker. They were reviewing it. They sent it back. I was analyzing it and fixing all the issues and then sending it again back to my coworker and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Takes a lot of time. Definitely if we're talking about generative AI, where every day new things appear on the internet, or which you can use, I want to be fast as well. So now I can just start writing, send it to ChatGPT, and it can review it for me. That's super fast. And definitely if you're using this trick, because you can ask it to review it, but you can again win productivity by using this example. So let's walk through it. What I'm doing here is I'm asking it that I will share some blog excerpts in the next prompts, right? So we're going to build it interactive. It's not one prompt and done. No, I'm going to share pieces of information that it should review. That's my context from the framework. I'm going to walk through the framework as well. And then please assume the role of a blog writing expert with 20 years of experience and review it. The acting role, it should act like a reviewer, a writing expert. Now, it's going to review it actually already for me, so I can start entering blog excerpts, but I want to edit the content if necessary. And why is this? If I'm asking it to review it and it's all correct, then it's just going to write out all the information that I did exactly the same back to me, which takes a lot of time. Definitely if we're talking about long parts of text. So I don't want to do that. Only if necessary. And provide the output or response with correct to indicate that the current part is grammatically correct and suitable for my blog. So if it's all okay, it will just mention correct, and I know, I can go on. Because why should I wait to do something with it if it's already okay? So that is the format, right? Then, a bit more information. Keep the same writing style as I use. Yeah, I did write that blog myself, right? And I don't want it to be much more excited than I am already, because it's trained on American data. Right? So I want to stick to my own writing style. And that's easy because I am writing that blog myself, so I'm sharing that with ChatGPT, and it can, well, use the same thing. And then, of course, I have some extra information, definitely the OK, so that it knows that from the next prompt onwards, I can start working with this. And then we have context, register, acting role format, and task craft. That's how easy it can be. Then, here I have the example. I did want to show that it really works. So I copied the first part of my blog. That was correct, of course, because I wrote it with ChatGPT. Should be very strange if that was not the case. Then I made some spelling mistakes, and you see it's going to completely send it back, but then fixing the issues that I made. I did this on purpose, of course. It was right, but just want to mention it. Now, the next things are, I think, much more interesting for you all. Because who is learning here new technologies or things on YouTube? Can I see hands? That is a lot of people. Well, I'm doing the same, but I'm interested if this is also the case for you. What I sometimes have is that someone is sending me a YouTube video like, you really have to watch this because there is a very interesting part about subject. And I'm like, oh, cool. I'm clicking on it. 2 hours video. I'm like, I don't have time to watch this 2 hour video. But okay, yeah, it's very interesting. That guy is very excited about it, so I have to watch it because I have to see that very important part, right? So I'm watching it. 1.5 hour later, finally, I get to the point, right? So I wasted 1.5 hours. Not really the thing I want, because why didn't he send me just a timestamp and I could start watching from there? But this really happened a lot to me, that people were just sending me YouTube videos, and actually just a part of that was the interesting part that I really wanted to view. Well, ChatGPT can fix this now for you. So let's get a YouTube video from one of my previous talks. And what you can do right now is you can go to the 3 dots, the menu button on the video, and click on transcript, show transcript. It's in Dutch here, but yeah, my settings are in Dutch. Maybe I should change that. Click on view transcript. Now, I get that transcript from YouTube. It's on all videos. Definitely works better on the English ones, but it still works on Dutch ones as well. I did try this already because I'm going to use ChatGPT, of course. I copy this complete transcript, and then I run into an issue. Because I was like, I'm going to send this to ChatGPT and I'm going to ask it for information. That's not going to work because this video takes over an hour. Too much information. So what I do is I copy this information and I move to ChatGPT Splitter, which is just a tool on the internet which you can find. And this actually implements everything for you already from the framework as well. I didn't write it, by the way, but it's just the OpenAI things where I based the framework on as well. So you can see, act like a document text loader. It's in place already for you. So what you do is you paste your transcript in it, you click on generate process, and what it's going to do, it implements everything that it needs to do for the right context, etc. for ChatGPT, like the framework describes, and it breaks it up into chunks. And it knows how many chunks you're going to upload. So if I have 1 out of 8 in this case, I'm going to send 8 chunks of information before I can start prompting against it. So it's really going to wait for that as well. And that's very interesting, right? So then I can ask, can you give me the takeaways from this video? And the most important thing here is, I like the GDPR part. So what I do is, can you give me the timestamp where they were talking about GDPR? And it gives that timestamp, and I can just go there and watch from that point. A lot of time I win with this, and I'm using this a lot now, because why should I still watch all the videos that I want to watch, just the entire video? So this is really helping me a lot, and hopefully you as well. But also coding, right? So I'm giving training, and one of my students asked me, yeah, we have to build a calculator, but did you do it yourself as well? And I was like, I made the assignment with ChatGPT, but no, I didn't make it myself, of course. But why should I? I asked ChatGPT, okay, can you write me quickly a calculator with HTML, CSS, PHP, because that was the assignment. And voila, it looks very nice. The thing here is, you need to have context, because context is key. And AI will not replace you, but people who use AI will. And why is that? I ask it, for example, to use the Bootstrap CSS framework. And then it's going to use that nice styling. Otherwise, it will just use some input fields, and it will be, yeah, that's a calculator. Well, not really if you upload it or if you build it towards an application. And this was just a few prompts, and I have a complete code without doing anything myself, which looks nice as well, right? Hopefully. And then finally, the last thing I want to share with you is, who knows about rubber ducking? Almost everyone. So this is like having a rubber duck and talking to it if you're having an issue with your code. So you're just explaining that rubber duck that you can just put on your desk, and that will help you to fix some issues. And why should you use a rubber duck, right? I have it here. I made one with ChatGPT in this case, and they are looking really nice, right? I asked it to make a rubber duck with Frontmania Society, where I'm working for. Looks cool. But why should you put them on your desk? And you will never get a response. So imagine that you're talking to it and you still get stuck. If you do exactly the same thing to ChatGPT, without sharing any confidential data, please, then it can respond to you as well. So reflect on what you were telling it. And if you don't like typing, but you like to speak, then download the app, for example, because there you can just talk to it, and then it will still answer your question or respond to what you're telling. That is a very interesting way of programming as well. I'm learning my students that as well, because if they are stuck, why should you ask me? You can do it ChatGPT as well, right? I'm not there your entire life. You can just ask ChatGPT, because it will be. So that is it about the examples, and I hope that it inspired you at least a little bit to start using it. and that you're not that person running into a new company and not knowing about Google, in this case, generative AI, but really use it and be that person actually advocating to your peers, we should do something with that. And maybe this is a bit too much information in 45 minutes. So I created a cheat sheet that you can use to actually help you get through the framework. One side note, I just tested the QR code and I see everyone getting their phone already. No, it works, but you get an advertisement somehow. So click skip and you will get the result. But please be aware of that. Here you can download it. Also, you can, of course, get to LinkedIn to read much more about it on my page. But I really hope that this inspires you and helps you to start working with it and to, craft prompts to help you through your front-end code, or explain your code maybe once via ChatGPT or any other tool. Thank you very much.